before we get to that point, we got to talk about a couple more reasons as to why we need to expand, why we have to change our definition of manifest destiny. Second big reason is we have to adapt with what we've done as far as our changes go. We're going to need new markets. Now, by the late 1800s, we have basically fully industrialized. We have shifted from a society that was based on agriculture to one that is now based on the production of finished goods. I was telling you guys well before that the overwhelming majority of people before the Industrial Revolution made at least some of their income from farming. Today, things are very, very different. So I want to ask you, do you know what percentage of the American population is still making their income as farmers? 1%. 1% of Americans are farmers. And they can produce enough food to feed the entire country, export a huge amount, and donate 80% of the world's food bank. That's how things have changed. Industrialization has shifted our society, and now we can produce so much by the late 1800s that we've basically saturated the American markets. We don't have enough people to buy all the stuff we can make. So if you're the Carnegies, if you're the Rockefellers, and you produce all this steel, and the American public says, we don't really need more steel, we're good. You just shut down all the factories. Not if you're going to be a billionaire. You got to go find other people to buy it. Now, fortunately, there's a huge population that's in need of our finished goods. As if we talked about it yesterday, who might be that huge population who needs finished goods? Who is it? We got to get to China. Billions upon billions of people that need our finished goods. This is a reason to expand further. Now, it's not just industrialization that's going to drive us to change manifest destiny. We need to bring civilization as well. Now, I need to ask, is this ringing some bells? Where have we heard bring civilization before? There we go. It's part of the original 3 pillars of manifest destiny. But again, now we need to kind of tweak it. We need to change it up at least a bit. We need to expand in order to bring civilization to the rest of the world. We need to expand to bring democracy. The overwhelming majority of humanity who has ever lived on Earth has lived under the control of a dictator, an emperor, or some kind of monarch. And now we have a system that we want to share with the rest of the world, where for the first time, you get to pick who your leaders are going to be. We need to bring the good news across the Pacific, over to China, as far as we can. Spread democracy, spread education, spread technology, and we need to bring industrialization with us. This is the next step in human progress. We want to share these things with the rest of the world. We want to make them industrialized too. Hopefully we're going to find another Carnegie. We're going to find another Rockefeller. Someone who will change society for the better. We are hoping that our expansion brings about the next step in the advancement of the human condition. And we need to be certain that we are bringing it as soon as we can. But we have to be careful. We have to be strategic. We have to think through about where we can expand. There are some people who are looking at these expansionist ideas and saying, why on earth do you want to keep going? We've completed manifest destiny. We've gone from Atlantic to Pacific. It's done. Why do you want to keep going further? Okay. There are going to be some people that say, we need to not expand. We need to stop our expansion. We need to limit ourselves to where we are right now. This group of people is called the isolationists. Now I need to ask real fast, what do we see right here? Isolation. We need to simply stop what we are doing. Don't expand any further. We need to just be certain that we have our nation as it stands and we just stay within our borders. Don't worry about further expansion. In fact, these isolationists are going to have some very fair points. But if they're going to get what they want, they need decision makers to agree with them. They're going to go to Congress. They're going to go to the president. And they're going to start to say, don't expand any further. There are simply inherent problems that we have. Namely, we have our own problems. We are not perfect. We need to fix our own issues first. Once we fix our own issues, then we can go overseas. Then we can go get our colonies. Then we can bring in more states. But until then, if we continue expanding, we would just be absorbing these other nations' problems. Now let me ask real fast. Is this just a fair statement for the isolationists to say? We have our issues, we're not perfect. But if you're an expansionist, if you want to keep going across the Pacific to China as far as we can go, what do you think you tell the isolationists that say we have our own problems?
Make problems somewhere else.
Let's do what, sir?
Make problems somewhere else.
Make problems somewhere. Not exactly. Wouldn't the expansionists simply say, yeah, we're not perfect, but we're the only real functioning republic democracy in the world. We need to go free these people under the boots of a tyrant, of a dictator, of a king, of a monarch. We need to go help them. And also, are we ever going to solve all of our problems? Never going to happen. We need to expand right now because people need us. Now, we have really two factions here. The expansionists say keep going. The isolationists say stop. We need to figure out our path, and it's going to come down to decisions made in Washington. The isolationists go to Congress. They go to the president, and they say, let's do this one piece at a time. We need to not expand because we just have this inherent underlying hypocrisy. It's simply undemocratic to force democracy on someone. Oh, the irony. It's simply hypocrisy to go to one of these countries in the Pacific or on your way to China and say, congratulations, we are taking you over and you're now part of the greatest democracy in the world, whether you like it or not. Do we see the hypocrisy in bringing democracy and saying, you're in it whether you like it or not? Now let me say this. What would the expansionists say about this?
We're saving them.
We're saving them. We are freeing them from their oppressive system. Now next, these isolationists say, one of the problems that comes with colonies is simply just, they're difficult to govern. It's hard. They're far away. Sometimes they don't even speak the same language as us. These colonies are difficult because eventually they're going to want independence. As if we have an example of colonies that were difficult to govern. Who am I referring to here? Us! We were difficult to govern. We were a thorn in the side of Great Britain when they were the mother country and we were the colonies. Remember the Boston Tea Party? Do you remember how that took place? What did we do at the Boston Tea Party when you don't remember we had to start everything all over again? What happened?
We kind of made a statement about how we felt about taxation. They were putting a lot of tax on teams. So just throw the teams to Harvard.
Refuse to pay the king's tax until we have representation. We are basically calling out the empire. We were a thorn in their side. What can the expansionists say about this? Is there anything to deny? The expansionists just say, this time it'll be different.
Wow.
Third thing they say is, colonies just invite rebellion. It's going to happen. They will eventually try to break free. They will eventually take up arms against you. Eventually, we are going to have to put down the rebellion, and we're going to have to send the army, we're going to have to send the navy to squash a rebellion. It's fantastically expensive. If only we had some example of rebellious colonies. Who am I referring to here? Us. We were the rebellious colonies. We broke away from the empire. What do you think the expansionists say about this one? Can they deny it? So, it'll be different this time. Expansion's going to begin. Now we start looking around the world, saying we have to be careful, we have to be strategic. What colonies could help us the most? We will renew the Monroe Doctrine in the late 1800s. Now you have to keep in mind for $20. What did the Monroe Doctrine state? What do you remember? Excellent. We will be the hegemon in the West. We will protect the Western Hemisphere. We will be the ones that are going to be the power in the West. But we have to give the Europeans something. We tell them, you don't interfere in the Western Hemisphere, and we promise we won't do what? Oh, good. $6. Was it Evan, you remember?
The Philippines attack them as Western Hemisphere, they will not attack the Europeans.
Certainly. You stay out of our interests, we stay out of yours. Now, by the late 1800s, we're in a situation where now we can compete with the Europeans. Now, we might have to be very careful about who we choose to go up against. Going up against the Brits would be difficult. Going up against the French, that would be hard. But at least we can compete. By the late 1800s, we invest millions upon millions of dollars in order to project strength around the world. We have a brand new navy with massive steel battleships, some of the finest in the world. We are very much on the rise in the late 1800s, and we tell these Europeans, stay out of the West. But there's an old world European power who has had their foot in the West for centuries. Who was that European power that basically started colonization in the West? Who was that? Spain still has some holdings in the West. Now, this is where we're going to find ourselves in a bit of a weird spot. A new Spanish king is going to ascend to the throne. King Alfonso XII comes to power, and he says, these Americans in the West are very much upstarts. Perhaps they're biting off more than they can chew. These Americans in the West are basically calling out these Europeans, the conquerors of the world. King Alfonso XII says, I want to reestablish the Spanish Empire. I want what we once had. I want to test American strength. What he says is, I want to reclaim the colonies we had in South America, in Central America, even up into North America and in the Caribbean. I want the once great Spanish Empire revived to its greatness. Let's see what these Americans are made of.